We're going to welcome in a senior writer for Golf Channel, Rex Hoggard. Rex, your reaction to this breaking news on this Monday and this returning member program with the PGA Tour?
Damon, all three of us are scribes, so we've all sat at our laptops and struggled with words sometimes. And I certainly struggled this time around because when you read through this new policy, there doesn't seem to be any holes in it. There doesn't seem to be any immediate problems with it. I wanted to refer to it as elegant, but I don't think that's the right word either because this is Brian Rolapp really flexing. He's done a very savvy job of making sure that he threaded that needle, as Eamon Lynch said. He really had to find a line between making some sort of penalty, appeasing the membership, making sure that everyone understands that there was a price to be paid if you violated the tour's policy and went with LIV Golf. And on the other side, you made it attractive to the top players to come back. If it was too penal, if they were going to have to sit out a year or two or more and pay just incredible fines, then your Jon Rahms and your Bryson DeChambeaus probably wouldn't consider it. But you have created an opportunity on both angles. I had just got off the phone with 3 different PGA Tour players, and all 3 of them echoed about the same thing. This is going to make the tour better. Bringing Brooks back makes the tour better. Doing this very narrow window in this unique situation and doing it in a finite amount of time, essentially giving these 4 top players a really limited 2-week window essentially to decide, is really putting the ball in the tour's court. This is going to give them the leverage that they need going forward. Now, it remains to be seen if the other 3 players that would be in this category, talking about Cam Smith, Jon Rahm, and Bryson DeChambeau, go for this because, again, they're all under contract just like Brooks was, and I'm not quite sure how the Public Investment Fund is going to feel about all 3 of those players trying to opt out of their deals, but it certainly opens a window in a very interesting way for the PGA Tour.
That date on which that window closes, February 2nd, isn't accidental either, Rex. That's a couple of days before the first LIV Golf event of the 2026 season kicks off in Riyadh. So they're basically putting it up to these guys, saying if you want to make a move, you got to make it before you tee off for LIV in 2026. A really narrow window. And, you know, back in the days when the antitrust lawsuit was going on, the judge in Northern California at the time suggested that the LIV contracts were very onerous, very restrictive. So there's really no insight as to whether or not these guys could actually take up the offer if they wanted it. Do you think this policy was drawn up and these terms were drawn up even explicitly knowing that it's very possible, even probable, that the other 3 guys eligible will not actually be able to follow along with what Brooks Koepka is doing?
Eamon, I think it's inevitable that it's going to put pressure on LIV Golf and the Public Investment Fund for no other reason than the other 3 players in this conversation, Cam Smith, Bryson DeChambeau, and Jon Rahm. They're now going to circle back around and want one of 2 things, a bigger contract going forward or an opt-out. However this works out, it will be fascinating over the next few weeks, and I'm looking forward to going out to Torrey Pines and having a chance to talk with Brooks about this, how that contract actually ended, because I think there would be some clues about what the other players could look forward to in case they wanted to do the same thing, if they wanted to sit down and either opt out of the deal or maybe just find a way to renegotiate it. Yes, I think the timing is absolutely specific to that first event in Saudi Arabia. And I'll take it a step further. There is also timing today as well. Eamon, this week, LIV Golf is having sort of their media days down in South Florida. And I spoke with one LIV player who was actually on his way to that media day. So it's going to be a lively week all the way around.
Rex, how critical in your mind is the fact that Brian Rolapp was an outsider, didn't have the scar tissue that Jay Monahan did, didn't go through the battles, the back and forth, the rivalry, and then the potential merger and the framework agreement? I mean, Brian Rolapp was an NFL executive at that point. How critical is it the point that he is an outsider, as it were, to this back and forth to kind of make this type of what I believe is a high-level chess move?
I was just having a conversation with our colleague Ryan Ladner right after this was announced, and the idea immediately came to both of us. This probably could not have happened if Jay Monahan was still in charge and calling all of the shots, because just go back and think about some of the things that Jay Monahan said over the course of this one. The idea that the tour wanted to be on the right side of history. I'm not quite sure you could make this decision or at least this policy if you had that hanging over your head. You're right. There was so much baggage when it came to Jay Monahan. You sort of look at how the decisions have transpired really over the last year. about Jay Monahan stepping at least to the side, not out, but to the side. You're letting Brian Rolapp take over as CEO. You're right. He doesn't have any of that baggage. He came in with a fresh set of eyes. He came in with the idea he wants to create the best possible product for he and his investors, and that's doing this. There's no two ways around it. You can sit and maybe criticize certain bits of this, saying that maybe the punishment for Brooks and the others wouldn't be enough. But the one thing you can't criticize is him and the other players possibly coming back only makes the tour better.
Eamon, what are your thoughts on my question to Rex? Was this a Brian Rolapp specific type of decision for the PGA Tour? The fact that he was a fresh eyes, a new face, didn't have the back and forth battles that Jay Monahan had. Could Jay have pulled this off today?
Well, Jay Monahan's part of the Future Competitions Committee that Tiger is running to reshape the tour, so presumably Jay Monahan was party to this discussion as well. Rolapp has a lot less baggage in this situation than Jay Monahan did. He wasn't involved in the worst of the scuffles and the litigation and the discovery process and the various sort of trolling and insults that went around at the time. So it's a little easier for Rolapp to take a fresh, clean look at it. And in some ways, I think you can make an argument that this is Rolapp, in a way, drawing a line under the framework agreement, because here he is trying to reshape the PGA Tour's business. We know there's going to be a lot of changes going forward. It's going to be a new and different, streamlined business. There's been one hangover conversation that has existed, and it's not just the LIV sort of PGA Tour rivalry that we've been talking about since 2022. It's the framework agreement hangover. It's what's happening. Is there a deal? Is there not a deal? Who's playing ball? Who's not playing ball? This, in a way, draws a line under that, because one would assume that Brian Rolapp is not necessarily in the business of seeking an immediate deal with the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia if he's offering a clear pathway for the biggest assets of LIV to make their way back to the PGA Tour. And Rolapp will tell you that he's focused very much not on what LIV does or what LIV's future is. He's focused on what the PGA Tour's future is. This is, I think, a very artfully constructed option that he's created here. It's kind of like this sort of express lane for four guys, and frankly it's the only four guys that the PGA Tour would want back from LIV. And some of them have a little more baggage. You know, Bryson, great asset. You'd want him back on the PGA Tour as well, but he's always been a little bit more of a polarizing character in the locker room. He's a more polarizing guy with fans. He was also one of the last litigants that were left on that thought that he'd been shortchanged from the PGA Tour and what they owed him over the years. Rahm going when he did after the framework agreement caused a lot of resentment, because Rahm went on record saying he thought he would be the catalyst to get that deal done. Instead, he probably killed the prospect of a deal, because suddenly a lot of PGA Tour players were like, we're not going to let him go fill his pockets and come back in a few months. Cam Smith's kind of floating out there in the ether enjoying fishing at the moment. I don't necessarily know that he's really been a combatant in any of this. So he got the perfect foil in the sense of Brooks was the guy who wanted to come back. And on paper, at least, it looks as though he's done a pretty good job of creating the perfect express lane to get him there that will not alienate the grassroots members.
Rex, I want to ask you about Brooks specifically, because no one questions the resume, the star power that he's had. He is a five-time major champ. He's also someone who hasn't won a major since 2023. You look at his resume from last year, he missed 3 cuts in major championships, had a T12 finish his only weekend that he saw at majors. He is a body that has been beat up, broken down, surgically repaired. Who is the PGA Tour getting in Brooks Koepka at the age of 35? It may not be the guy who used to battle Dustin Johnson on weekends at Bethpage Black and Shinnecock Hills.
I think to Eamon's point, they're getting back a very valuable villain. I think we've had this conversation over the last few years that if LIV Golf was guilty of anything, is it took a lot of the villains away from the PGA Tour. And for the product to work, you have to have the good guys and the bad guys. And to be fair to Brooks, he has grown up, he's matured, he's a much different player and person now than when he joined LIV Golf. But yeah, that's a huge question about, from a competitive standpoint, which version of Brooks comes back. I think I would counter, and we've made this argument about Jon Rahm in the past, that maybe 54 holes of team golf and shorts with loud music. Maybe that's not the best way for him to prepare for the major championships. I think you could probably make the same conversation for Brooks Koepka. Some guys who went to LIV loved it. Some guys probably did not. So I will be curious that when Brooks does come back, how he clicks back into that competitive mode. Let's go back to Netflix and what we learned about Brooks after the fact, that he didn't join LIV Golf necessarily because he thought he could be a catalyst for change. He joined LIV Golf because he thought injury was going to rob him of a large portion of his career, and he might as well take a payout. Things have changed dramatically since then, and I think when you look at what he's done over the course of his career, you're getting a version that's closer to the competitive guy that won in 2023 at the PGA Championship than maybe the guy the PGA Tour had when he left.